Welcome back everyone to the Hello World Guy, and this is episode number 4 of the platformer series. And if you remember, in the last video we had pretty much a great looking tile system for creating levels, and we also had an amazing great feeling camera system as well. So today I actually want to do something really simple, that is animate our player. And do that through an animator, because in the last video, even though we in the previous series and in the previous videos we have used animations, but we still haven't used a proper animator before, like in one which we can actually switch between states and stuff. Now you can see my coin is animating, but I haven't created like a proper animator. It's just one animation that's playing, not multiple animations that is switch between, etc. So today we are going to learn about the Unity animator as well. In order to get started, first let's actually create our animation. So if I go here, you can see I've got my animation folder here. I'm going to actually create a new folder in here. Because the player is going to of course set multiple animations, I think it makes sense to have a separate player for that. So now I'm just going to select my player, just go in a bit, and then you can see my player is looking awesome, and we have got a sprite here. Now we can delete this extra square because now we don't really need that, and I can make this sprite just one by one. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is actually change its sprite to the player 1, player idle. Just let me drag that in here. That looks pretty awesome. So you can see it's kind of really tiny. You might want to increase its size to something like 5. That makes a lot more sense. I'm going to also select my player. Then for some reason I cannot see my box collider, it seems. If I hit edit collider, then I can see that. Oh, by the way, you don't need to change the values here. You can just click on edit collider and then just drag these to kind of make your collider. So just click on edit collider and then do this, drag this here. Maybe I think this is a bit too small. That's actually pretty small. I'm going to actually select my sprite now. Actually you can scale your sprite in here, but I think what I'm going to do is go under here and decrease the amount of pixels per unit to something like 32. Apply that, because even though it should be really 8. Apply that, then go under sprite, change its size to back to 1, and yes, that's the actual size of the image now. So yeah, that's pretty good. And now I'm going to select my player, of course, and then go under edit collider and change this collider to match the actual visible sprite. Okay, so I'm going to just drag it so that it matches, especially the feet. That's a bit of a problem, but yeah. So yes, that's pretty much matching the whole sprite. And now what we can do is also select my feet object, then go to movement here and drag it a bit down here. That's good. So we have got all of this done. So now what we can do is select my sprite and make sure that its color is white so that it doesn't have any tint, and you can see this is our sprite here. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and that's pretty awesome. So now we can start animating it actually. So for that, go under window, animation, and then any animation window, not the animator window, the animation window. I'm going to dock it here, below here, and here you can see to begin animating sprite, create an animator, and I'm going to hit create, and in here we are going to of course choose our animation folder and go under the player folder that we just created, and I'm going to name this to player underscore idle, because this is going to be our idle animation. I'm going to go under my player folder as well and kind of make sure that the animator is named player, not just sprite, because it normally names it after the object. So anyways, going back under this animation here in the idle animation folder, I'm going to actually take this animation window, and I'm going to take this project window and dock it to here for now, and then I'm going to select, so I can select these and then drag in the animator window. I'm going to drag that in the animation window, and that should work. So if I hit the spacebar key to play it, play this, then you can see that it's way too fast. The reason is that our frames are currently spaced out like this, and you can of course increase their spacing manually by like this, but currently our animation, if you actually that option isn't available, seems like. Alright, so just increase its size by dragging this and making like something like that, but that seems a bit too slow. So Now I'm going to decrease it to something like this. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Anyways, I have changed it to be exactly 20 frames like that, and I think that looks pretty awesome. It's 60 frames per second, so this is 1/3 of a second, and that looks pretty good. You can make it, according to whatever speed you like. This doesn't really impact the actual functionality. So now I'm going to go under the player idle, here where it says player idle, and hit create new clip to create a new clip, because of course we want to have multiple animations, and create the player run animation, player underscore run. Okay, save that. Now of course I'm going to go under the run folder here, just select all of these sprites and paste them here. Now I already selected all of them, so I'm going to just increase them until they are like, let's say 20 frames. Oh, we only changed the size of one animation on one file here, so I'm going to select all of these and make them 8 as well. Hit apply, and now look at that. Yes, it looks pretty awesome. We are also going to use the jump animation, so I'm going to select both of these and change them to 8 and hit apply. Anyways, with that done, let's create the jump animation. Just hit create new clip and go player underscore jump, and then just drag these jump animation here and make it something like, I'm going to make it 5 frames. So we are going to set this to something like 10 frames, I think. Maybe not. It's good at a small amount, because this is not going to be played, immediately that often. It's only going to be one time. So I think that's pretty awesome. So yeah, this is all really cool. And now we have got all of our animations created. So this is our idle animation. Okay, and this is our jump animation. It currently doesn't make much sense, but it will, believe me. And this is the run animation. So yeah, we have got our animations done here, and now it's time to create the actual animator. So after these are done, we are going to create our animator. Of course, I'm going to drag my project for this thing to here, and if I actually play the game at this point, then what you should see is that we have got our player, and for some reason it's really not working. The actual it's playing the idle animation, but the box slider isn't working. So let me select the player object, make sure that the main camera, and let me select the player object, hit F, and set the sprite. Okay, it's not at exactly 0 0, so make sure it's at 0 0, and then select the player, go under edit collider, and yeah, that's pretty awesome. So anyways, now if I hit play, then this should hopefully work. uh, okay, and we can now jump in here, and yes, and that's working. But of course it's currently not displaying the animation, it's only displaying the idle animation. So in order to do that, make it do that, I'm going to go under animation folder, player folder, and open up the player animator, which will open it up in an animator window. I just like to have it here. You can place it anywhere else if you want, but really this is the best place. Anyway, you can see we've got a yellow state here, which is the default state, which starts when the game starts, and of course we want that to be idle, so this is right. But the rest of the states are just kind of standing there and not doing anything. So we actually want to transition into those states. Now what I can do is, let's just have jump to the side for now. Let's focus on the running state. So if I go right click on my player and hit make transition, then you can see this arrow appears and I can point it to any state, including the entry state literally. And we've also got an exit state over there, but I'm going to select the run state now. Now that creates a transition. I can create a transition for the run state back to the idle state as well. But these transitions will kind of happen immediately, one after the other. I'm not actually really sure that if I hit play right now, then you should see that the idle animation plays, and then the run plays, and then the idle plays, and then the run plays. So this is currently what's happening, but we of course want it to happen at specific times, when the player is actually moving. So in order to do that, we can use something called parameters. So in order to do that, go under this parameters tab here, up here, and then hit this plus icon to create a new parameter. Now this is going to be a bool, and which it means a condition, and I'm going to call this is moving. Okay, let's call it is moving. You can have spaces in between, but I just like camel case for some reason. Anyway, this is going to be by default, of course, false. And in this condition, we can add a new condition here, and you can see it automatically gets it to be is moving is equal to true, which is right. And when transitioning back, we are going to add is moving is equal to false. So this is a condition here. You can see if I select the transition by clicking on it, you can see we got conditions option here. And also when we are actually exiting a transition, we should turn off this exit time and make sure, or you can also make it 0 or turn it off completely. It's up to you. I'm going to just turn it off so that it doesn't wait for the idle animation to finish before transitioning. And this transition duration is not really needed for a sprite based animation. It's more needed for skeletal animations in 3D especially. So just make that 0 as well. Then go under here and make turn off the exit time, make the transition duration 0 for both of these transitions, selecting them. And after doing that, this should work. So by default it should be playing the idle animation, and only the idle animation, of course, before we are not setting this is moving variable anywhere. So now we will learn how to do that. So in order to accomplish that, here I have opened up my player script here, and I'm going to do a couple of things. So first, of course, we need a reference to our animator in order to change anything about it. So for that, create a serialized field. This should be a private animator, not animation, called animator. Just call it animator, and this is a serialized field so that we can set it in the inspector, because the animator is not on the player object itself, it's on the sprite. So that kind of a problem. Anyways, after selecting that, having this animator variable which we will select in the inspector, I'm going to just go down here in the fixed update, and you can see that we are saying that is equal to we are setting this to the move variable. Now we are going to say if move is greater than 0.01, let's say, then we are going to say animator dot, we are going to use set bool here to actually set a bool variable of the animator. So set bool, and you can give it a name and a bool value. So for the name, you can also give it an ID, but we are going to use the name, and that's going to be is moving. Do know that it has to match the actual name of the parameter with respect to everything, spacing, capitalization, etc, etc. And for the actual value, I'm going to just say move. Oh, true. So this is true. And if not, then I'm just going to copy this line of code and hit go else. And is actually, I think IntelliSense will guess it for me. Nope. No, it's not guessing. I really expected it to. It's actually pretty intelligent. Oh, come on. So false this time, and this should work. So if I let it compile, then just to recap, you can see that we are just saying animator.setBool moving to true when our move is greater than 0, and if not, then we are going to set it to be false. So this won't actually work because move can also be negative. So we make sure that we are doing mathf dot abs to get the absolute value of move, and then yeah, that way it should work. So if I go under Unity and let it compile, then we can just drag our animator. So if I select my player, under scene view, I'm going to go under here and drag the sprite for the animator here, because the sprite already has an animator component, as you can see. And if I hit play at this point, this should actually work. So you can see that it's working, and you can see that as soon as I start moving, it's running, and when I stop moving, it's not running. It's in the jump animation. So yeah, that's actually really awesome. It's actually in the moving animation now when I move, and not when I'm not moving. So this is working, and now we need to implement the jump animation. Okay, so in order to implement the jump animation, we of course need to create the transition first, and you might create an transition from idle to jump to idle, from run to jump, and from jump to run. But that would kind of be tedious, and we want to jump from literally any state. So we can actually use this any state here, and it's not really makes no sense to use idle separately. So any state basically allows us to transition from, well, any state. So I'm going to make a transition to jump which can occur at any state if its conditions are true, and of course exit time is not valid here because this is any state, and I'm going to make the transition duration 0 as well, and add in a condition. Now this condition I'm going to add in a new bool here, and I'm going to call this is jumping. Okay, and then we are going to set this to is jumping, the variable, and then make sure that it's true. And when it's true, we are actually going to transition. Now of course we also want to transition back and not just jump forever. So we are going to go here, make transition to idle, and make a transition to run as well. Now I'm going to go under this transition, when we are jumping, and just make sure that exit time is off, make the transition duration 0. And then for the list of conditions, I'm going to add in another condition here, make it if jumping, and this is of course going to be false when we are actually moving, but when we are moving the idle animation, we also make sure that if moving is false. Now I'm going to actually you can actually copy the animation and paste if I'm not wrong. No, you can't. I thought you could, but anyways, turn on the exit time here and stuff, and add two states here. Make sure that if jumping is false and if moving is true when we are moving to the run animation. Now this should work, and yeah, but we are of course not setting the if jumping variable. So for that, we can just go in here, and when we get our jump, if you notice here, for actually jumping, we use this here. So if it's grounded and rb dot add force, we are doing this. And what I'm going to do is just do this. In here we can say animator dot set bool, and of course for the name is jumping, and yeah, let's make it true. Now this works, but when do we set it to false? That's a great question, and of course for that we need to know when we actually land, but currently we don't have any landing functionality. So yeah, this is a bit of a problem. So this means that we will need to change the basic our player character controller a little bit. It's not that complicated, but it's really actually really easy to do landing. But let me just show you how to do it. Now creating the landing system is really simple, and I've already done that in just 3 lines of code. So first, before we actually do our ground check in here, create a variable called was grounded and set that to the if grounded. And in here we need to check if the previously the player was not grounded and now it is grounded. That means that the player has landed, and thus we can set this rule to false. So upon doing that, if I go here, then this should work. So you can see the player jumps, displays this, and then does that. Now I think the animation is too fast. Open up the jump animation. It's currently too just way too fast. So I think I'm actually going to make that something like at least let's try 12 frames. Trying 12 frames, you can see that this should pretty much work correctly. Yeah, that looks pretty reasonable. Maybe you want maybe something even larger, like making it something like literally 20 frames or even 25 frames could be better. So if I hit play now, then you should see that this is yeah, it's working. So anyways, you can see now we have got a completely animated character and a coin that we can pick. So this is working. So I will see you in the next video in which we will add more functionality to our game. So stay tuned for that, and make sure to like and subscribe, and bye.